Hi, I'm Astrid Clarke. I don't like my first name, so I normally go by my middle name, Danielle. You can only call me Astrid if I let you, or if you're my enemy. I don't have many enemies. My mum and dad split up when I was young. I was the baby of the family, the youngest child of 5, and it was an ugly divorce. When it was finalised, my siblings and I were split up. I moved to England with my mum to a nice little area of Cambridge, while my siblings and dad stayed in San Francisco. My dad occasionally flew over to see me, usually when it was drop-off time for the others. He'd stay a week, then leave again, either alone or taking them back with him. My siblings were interesting people, to say the least. My eldest brother Simon was exceedingly dull. He had dreams of going to Harvard and becoming a doctor. Unfortunately, he lacked the intelligence to do so. He's followed by my sister Amy. Unlike Simon, Amy was accepted into Harvard and passed through with a degree in medicine. My other brother was Thomas. Thomas was still in uni studying chemistry. Finally, there's Jackie, although he'd kill you if you called him that. His real name was Jackson, but he was happy with Jack too. Jack was only 11 months old when I was born. I get the feeling that I might have been unplanned. I honestly can't tell you where my obsession began, but ever since I was a little girlie, I wanted to be in the FBI. Until a few years ago, they didn't operate in the UK. When I was young, I would sneak downstairs every night after my mum put me to bed to watch the shows she had on. Usually my mum would watch crime shows on Friday, Saturday and Sunday evenings when she didn't have work the next morning. I would sneak down, stand on the stairs and watch. I especially liked the murder ones. Eventually, when I was old enough to have a TV in my room, I watched crime shows all day, every day. I would study it for exams whenever I wasn't preoccupied with my shows, making sure I knew everything. Eventually, my GCSEs came and left, followed by A-levels, my bachelor's, and then my master's. After constant phone calls, emails, and posts to the FBI, I eventually succeeded in getting an invitation to a class. It was only a visitation thing they did yearly, but I got invited nonetheless. I went to the class a few days before I turned 17. Some guy called Adrian Michaels, I saw from his name tag on the left side of his shirt, laughed at me. Granted, I had some features that weren't exactly common within the centre. My bright pink hair and English accent might be a small indicator. Agent Michaels initially refused to let me into the class, even when I showed him the invite. He'd looked it over from front to back several times. "Isn't this supposed to be a visitation thing anyway?" I asked, shifting slightly. Agent Michaels glanced at me over the top of my phone with a grunt. He abruptly handed it back and gestured to a black door. "In there," he grunted. I nodded, thanked him, and then approached the door. I tried to peek through a small crack in the door. I could hear a singular voice. He sounded somewhat powerful, maybe a person of authority.
"Why are we nosing about?"
I jumped with a quiet squeak, turning around quickly. "Sorry, sir. I was checking to make sure I was in the right place," I quietly said.
"Speak up, ma'am."
I did.
"The visitation session with Agent Miller."
He asked, nodding to the door.
"In there,"
he said.
"I'd hurry up. It's starting in a few minutes."
He continued. I broke eye contact for a moment to try and find a name badge, but I had no success. "Thank you, sir," I spoke, turning for the door. He nodded, then walked down the hall. I opened the door and sloped in. I didn't want to speak to anyone. Suddenly I had a rush of anxiety. I'd never been this nervous before. I didn't like it one single bit. I could see lots of boys and few girls. All of them chatted confidently but quickly. This was an instant sign of nerves, fast talking. Unlike my quirky self, note the heavy sarcasm, the girls were all dressed in smart casual. They all had their brown, blonde, and black hair tied back in buns, ponytails, and plaits. Most of the girls had pencil skirts on, but a few wore suits. All in all, they looked very professional. Then there's me. Bright pink hair in a loose bun, white tank top with sarcasm now loading on, and knee-length denim shorts. Finally, somebody walked in. I assumed this was Agent Miller. I stood up like the rest of the group, waiting to be told to sit down. Miller walked around the group, almost scanning everyone. A few boys got stink eyes, and so did a few girls. He eventually found his way to me. All that he did? Raise an eyebrow and walk off. And yet, somehow, I felt singled out. The class progressed with no issues. Miller asked the standard questions, picking on a different person each time. The questions were generally along the lines of identifying certain guns and weapons, what to do in certain situations, etc. Finally, he got to me. I'd hidden at the back, hoping nobody would see me. I used to love my hair, but now I feel embarrassed by it. Agent Miller looked me straight in the eyes.
Miss Clarke,
He began, pausing slightly.
the FBI, along with many companies in the world, have values that each agent holds deep in their heart. Name me the FBI's core values.
The class turned to face me. The sudden pressure of 30 pairs of eyes staring at me only succeeded in increasing my anxiety. I sat up a little straighter and took a deep breath. Respect, integrity, accountability, leadership, diversity, compassion, fairness, and rigorous obedience to the Constitution, I answered.
Well done, madam. How old are you?
I turned 17 in 3 days. The class instantly began whispering amongst themselves. Agent Miller paced at the front.
You.
He pointed to a girl at the front.
Elaborate.
The girl shifted, and I felt a tiny bit bad that she was as uncomfortable as I was. I'm sorry, she spoke. Agent Miller spun on his heel.
Explain what the core values mean. It's all well and good having the values, but you have to know what they mean to understand them.
I sighed shakily. Why? Well, of course, I knew the core values, but I hated being called on. I hated it in school, and I hated it then. The poor woman at the front floundered, crumbling slightly beneath the pressure.
I see we've got a full room.
I, along with the rest of the class, turned to place a body to the voice. He walked in with a small smirk on his face. Wait a minute, is that the same guy from earlier? The one that didn't have a name tag? Oh, hell.
Agent Evans.
Miller greeted, reaching out for a handshake. Agent Evans returned it with a small smile. His eyes scanned the crowd, locking onto mine.
What's your name, ma'am?
I swallowed back the nervous bile. Danielle Clarke, I replied, trying my best to remain confident.
Pleasure to meet you, Miss Clarke.
I had no idea who this guy was, but judging from how the class reacted, he was pretty important. My blank stare prompted him to continue.
Allow me to introduce myself. I am Agent Evans, and I am the director of this section.
I felt my heart sink a little. How embarrassing.
I have to say, you've impressed me.
He continued.
Walk with me.
He asked, reaching for the door handle. I grabbed my pink and silver bag and slung it over my shoulder, following the director out of the room. I felt a little out of place as I walked through the corridors with Agent Evans. Everyone was in smart uniform or formal wear with normal hair colours, and here I was in denim shorts and a tank top slightly too big. Evans led me to a small office and gestured for me to sit down. I waited and allowed him to sit first.
You're not from the United States, are you?
I moved my bag in between my legs on the slightly uncomfortable chair. Yes and no, I replied. Evans frowned lightly.
How so?
He asked. Technically, I'm American. My parents are American, and so are my siblings. But I moved to Cambridge in the UK before I was even in preschool, kindergarten, so I have dual citizenship. Evans nodded, pressing 2 fingers to his lips, his other fingers interlocked.
Why do you have an interest in the FBI? The FBI doesn't operate in England.
I shook my head, flicking my fringe out of the way. No, they don't. Evans narrowed his eyes slightly.
So I come back to my earlier question. Why the interest?
Evans retorted, pursing his lips. I hesitated. I didn't like talking about it, but then again, he was FBI. If he wanted to know, he'd find out one way or another. So, I told him. As part of my parents' divorce, I had to live with my dad in San Francisco for 6 months a year. My neighbour here went missing one day. We were good friends, so it was upsetting. He was missing for nearly 2 months before anyone did anything, I explained. We weren't close, but we were good friends. Plus, he was my crush, before I got siblings owned. You know, you're like the sister I never had. What can I say to that? Ignore that, let's date? No, thank you. I continued. Then, one day, an article came out saying he was supposedly dead. But there's been no evidence suggesting that he's dead, neither has there been any to show he's alive. Evan's face never changed, and it unnerved me a little. I began to play with the ring I received on my 13th birthday.
That still doesn't answer my question.
Well, it just makes me so angry that no one ever bothered to try and find him when he first disappeared. He was my friend for nearly 10 years and helped me through so much. I just don't want anyone else in that position, I replied, feeling my heart clench painfully. I can't even imagine what his mum must feel. Unlike me, he was one of 3 brothers, all of whom still live together.
So why not join the police force? The FBI doesn't generally help with civilian work. We tend to be preventing terrorism against our own country.
His dark brown eyes drilled into my hazel eyes. To put it bluntly, the police were useless. They did nothing, and I want to be somewhere higher up. I want to help people, I said back, not breaking my gaze once. Evans continued to stare into my eyes, obviously trying to detect some form of lying. Except I wasn't. Evans finally nodded and leaned back into his chair, lacing his fingers together.
Well, obviously, you'd have to go through training before you could join. But MI5 operates in the UK, if my memory serves. If you succeed in getting into MI5, which is an incredible feat on its own, I will find a way for you to join the FBI at whatever position you are in when I find you.
With all due respect, sir, how will you know? I asked, playing with my cuticles. Evans smirked.
I have my contacts.
Somehow, that said more than any sentence could ever do. My life was going well for about 6 months before my luck dried up. Abruptly, with no warning, my mum fell sick. Really sick. She was too ill to look after a whole house, and I was too busy to maintain it and look after her. I had no other option but to sell our beloved house and move back to the States. With the money we got from the house, my mum and I bought a small flat just a few streets away from our old house. I could go back as and when I wanted. My whole life was in Cambridge. I couldn't just leave it. Not even for my dream job.
Rise and shine, Clarke. You've got your first case.
Was the phone call I received at 4 a.m. in mid-April. I mumbled something, and the voice in the other end scoffed. It was Jenna, my friend within the FBI.
That means wake up, lazy ass.
I rubbed my eyes and breathed deeply, trying to wake myself up. What are you doing up? Isn't it like 4 a.m? I croaked. Jenna hummed.
It's 5, and I'm on the night shift. I finish at 7, though, so it's not too bad.
I shook my head. When and where do I need to be there?
Evans wants you at the office by 4. He wants to brief you before you begin.
I nodded, then realized they couldn't see me. Okay, I'll be there.
Oh, before you go.
I stopped before hanging up. Yeah? I was slightly more awake now.
It's in New York, and your flight is booked for 6 a.m.
I groaned.
A car will get you from JFK around 3-ish.
Do you hate me? Jenna laughed down the phone.
Would you rather do the 7 to 7 that I do?
I whined as I pulled my covers off. No. Ugh, it's not even 2 a.m, I cried. Jenna chuckled.
Have fun, mon ami.
I debated my life choices for a few seconds before relinquishing my warm bed. As the kettle started to boil with the juice of the gods, I began to think about my new house. I'd put an offer on an apartment a while ago, so I was living with my aunt and mum while I waited for it to be ready. I'd made the offer about 4 months ago, but there were complications, as there usually are, so I temporarily moved in with my aunt. I walked into the small bathroom and did my makeup roughly, so I didn't look like a zombie. I dressed in my black yoga pants and hoodie. I neatly folded up some black pencil skirts, 2 plain white blouses, and 2 black dresses. I threw in some of my favourite black heels before dumping my makeup bag and 2 plain black cardigans in. I wrote a quick note to my mum and aunt saying how I was wanted in New York and didn't know how long I was going to be away. Before I left, I gave my aunt's huskies a small treat each and locked them up. I got into my blue Peugeot and drove to the private car park, just under the normal car park. I showed the guy at the front my FBI badge and was allowed in. Space below was normally for professionals. It minimised the risk of having your car stolen, which was way more common than you'd like to believe. I was sat on the plane by 5. Jenna wasn't evil enough to sit me in economy, God bless her. I found my seat and dropped into it, rubbing my eyes furiously. Thank God I didn't bother with eye makeup yet. I glanced at my watch, then counted 3 hours ahead. 8:30. Would Evans be awake yet? Then I laughed internally. Of course he'd be awake. The man used to serve in the army. He thought 6 a.m. was a lie-in. Now, where's Evans' email? Ah, there it is. Subject, task brief. Good morning, Agent Evans. I am en route to JFK as we speak. Jenna Brooks informed me of an urgent matter that required me in New York. Would it be possible to receive a rundown before I arrive? I would like to know what is happening so I can be best prepared. Kind regards, A. Clarke. She, her, hers. I fired off the email, fully expecting Evans to refuse the request. It's not common practice to talk to your agent via email, but then again, it wasn't exactly common to fly in an agent from the other side of the states to help. My office was in San Francisco, so I was based there. I did want to move to NYC and work under Evans, but I couldn't afford an apartment there, so I stayed in my hometown. Why did Evans hire me then? Well, I don't know. I received an email from my boss, Michaela Walden, saying that Evans had requested me and I had to go. I thought she had emailed the wrong A. Clarke. There was me, Alison Clarke, Amelia Clarke, Andrew Clarke, and Adam Clarke. No, we had nothing in common besides our surname. My laptop pinged with an email alert.
Okay, where's that email address for Clarke and Miller? Create this task brief. Good morning, Agent Clarke and Agent Miller. I am glad you're on the way. The sooner you get started, the better. To begin with, you and Agent Miller will be paired up on this case, hence why I have copied him in. I asked Mrs. Brooks to inform you of said urgent matter. There have been several reports over the last 48 hours, 73 to be exact, surrounding a group of gangsters, the number of which varies between 3 and 4, who have broken into various small jewelry stores and stolen hundreds of thousands worth of product. A small team succeeded in arresting them yesterday and brought them to our facility where you and Agent Miller will interrogate them. Kind regards, K. Evans. And send.
I scratched my eyebrow. I could already feel a migraine coming. What? I mumbled to myself. Subject, read task brief. Good morning, Agent Evans. Thank you for your reply. Forgive me if I have misread this in any way. Gangsters? As in Al Capone and Pablo Escobar? Kind regards, A. Clarke. She, her, hers.
I have a reply. Let's see. She's asking, thank you for your reply. Forgive me, I have misread this in any way. Gangsters, as in Al Capone and Pablo Escobar. Very good. Okay, send my reply out now. Not quite, but you're on the right track. They just robbed just over $4 million from several jewelry stores in and around New York City.
Subject, read task brief. With all due respect, sir, why is this our issue? Can't the police deal with it? This seems more like their jurisdiction. Kind regards, A. Clarke. She, her, hers.
A reply. Let's see. Can't the police deal with it? This seems more like their jurisdiction. Oh, she is not incorrect. However, my reply. Normally, yes, we would assist in their investigation. This group have individual criminal records, all of which have either been expunged or served. Once a theft reaches over 1 million, generally, we get involved. Forensics couldn't find any DNA anywhere in the stores either, which is the main reason we're here. Regards, Evans.
Subject, re task brief. Not even hair follicles? Sweat? Kind regards, A. Clarke. She, her, hers.
Miss, would you like any refreshments?
The air steward just interrupted my brooding. I squinted. Do you have tea? She hesitated.
Oh, I believe we have Earl Grey.
I nodded. How much is it? She displayed the card reader.
It is $5.
I sighed internally. Thank you. I smiled as she passed over the liquid of life.
Still no questions from Miller. Another one from Miss Clarke. Not even hair follicles or sweat. Nice attention to detail. Nothing except a piece of paper left on the desk with their names on it.
Subject, re task brief. Why would they do that? It's almost like they want to get caught. Kind regards, A. Clarke. She, her, hers.
Let's see. Oh, another reply. Would they do that? It's almost like they want to get caught. Sharp, she's thinking. That's why we're now involved.
Subject, re task brief. Understood. Thank you, sir. I feel like this is the exact thing you see in a Martin Scorsese movie. Kind regards, A. Clarke. She, her, hers.
Evans, why her? She's a rookie.
A voice whined from just outside the door. I'd landed in New York about an hour ago and was nursing my 5th tea of the morning. The door opened and Evans walked in, looking very annoyed.
Enough, Miller. Agent Clarke is your partner, and that's that.
I rolled my eyes but smiled. Hello, Miller. I see the last 5 years haven't been kind to you. Evans bit his lip and looked away. Miller's face turned an interesting shade of purple. He thrust a manila folder into my arms with a face like thunder.
You'll need this then, Agent Clarke.
I rose above his overwhelming, joyful persona with a soft sigh. I've already read up on them, but to satisfy you, I shall read it again. Miller only grumbled. I opened up the folder, only briefly scanning through it. As I said, I'd already read the file, but sometimes the file they actually had on site is more than what we receive, unless you're put straight into the field, in which case they give you the whole file. Levi McIntyre, 27 years old, placed in several foster homes, has been arrested in several states, released due to a lack of evidence. Known convictions: bribery, aiding and abetting, assault, conspiracy, robbery, fraud and theft. Like I said, I'd already read the file. Most of this I knew, so it only jump-started my brain into motion. We approached the interview room in the same stony silence my lovely partner had greeted me with. He glared through the one-way mirror, eyes twitching with disgust. Wow. I mean, don't get me wrong, a criminal is a criminal. But he'd stolen, not murdered. I put the folder down on the control unit and redid my hair. Miller glanced back and forth.
You're not going in?
I shrugged. My pass hasn't been authorized to access interview rooms yet, so I have to be buzzed in by a senior member. Miller huffed.
Fine.
He swiped his keycard down the side. The door beeped and clicked open.
I'm not doing that for everyone. Get your pass sorted.
I rolled my eyes. Take it up with admin. This isn't a me problem. I hissed back, walking in front. Miller huffed. I briefly wondered if I'd taken drugs by mistake and was in a room with a bull mastiff. But no, just Miller. I sat in the chair directly opposite Levi McIntyre, while Miller was sitting on my left. Levi was messing around with a paperclip, unlocking and relocking his cuffs. I found it rather amusing as he did so. It very clearly wound Miller up. Levi continued being dismissive towards any questions Miller asked, only enraging him further. Miller reached across the small table and snatched a paperclip out of Levi's hands.
What are you going to do now?
Levi shrugged.
I'm a clever man. I'm sure I'll find something else.
I bit my lip, hoping I could distract myself. Levi caught me doing so and grinned.
Seems like the lady is enjoying this.
Miller turned to glare at me, and I have to admit, it was a little scary. It reminded me of when my dad used to tell me off, that parental sort of glare they give you. I raised my hands in surrender, watching in silence as Miller attempted to interrogate the criminal. It seemed like Levi had somehow acquired the questions beforehand, even though I hadn't been given the questions beforehand. Everything Miller asked, Levi rebutted twice as fast. At one point, Miller's face went so purple I thought he'd hit Levi. He definitely couldn't answer the questions then. It was then I stepped in and forced his dramatic ass out.
What the fuck are you doing?
I shoved his shoulder back. He can't answer us if you've dislodged his esophagus, can he? Miller fumed, shaking my hand off.
I am your senior in this case.
I stepped back. There wouldn't be a case if he couldn't talk, I hissed back. He scoffed angrily. I crossed my arms and observed Levi through the glass. In the 2 minutes it took me to force Miller out the room, Levi had found another way to get back at the cuffs, the clicking of which rang like an annoying, very loud alarm clock. I can take over the last few questions, I said quietly. If you want to get some air. He is really annoying. Miller glanced over a slight curl in his upper lip.
I'm getting a coffee.
I nodded. Okay, I'll finish up with Levi and then wait out here for you. He grabbed his ID off the side and swiped the door open. Miller hesitated. Do you drink Earl Grey? I smiled slightly. Yeah, 2 sugars and milk. I handed the pass back over and entered the room. Sorry about that, I apologized, sitting back down. Where were we? Levi's eyes locked onto mine, never breaking. It both impressed me and unnerved me. He continued messing with the cuffs. I kept an impassive face as I watched, even though my inner child was practically shrieking with joy. Impressive.
Thanks. You need to be in this business.
This business? There is no business with theft and crime, Levi. I looked at the cuffs curiously. I'm surprised they weren't sturdier.
It provides me with an income, therefore it is a form of business.
I cleared my throat. By that logic, being a beggar is also a business. Levi's eyebrows quirked.
How so?
I watched his movements for a few quiet seconds. It provides a form of income, no? Levi hummed but didn't offer any words. I allowed the room to lapse into silence, just watching him curiously. How did you do it? I asked, sitting forward slightly. One of the badges on my sleeve caught the fluorescent light. It was one of the English flags. I was allowed it on as it was my home country, near enough. Many people had their home or familial flags somewhere on their uniforms. The light bounced across the table, piquing Levi's interest. He tilted his head to look at the badge in question. His eyes widened slightly as he stared.
Interpol?
He asked, staring into my eyes, smirking. His eyes were such a gorgeous blue. They were almost aqua. I forced myself to focus. I smirked back and folded my arms, leaning forward so my elbows rested on the table. No. I enjoyed the look of confusion on his face. Interpol is only for the French, and I'm sure you can gather that I'm not French. Oui? I jibed, raising my eyebrows.
Clarke, get on with it. We don't have all day.
Miller's irritating voice came from the hidden speakers. Levi's eyes widened to the size of saucers.
Clarke? As in Jack Clarke?
Confusion ran through my body. How did he know Jack? I forced my face to remain stoic. No, as in Agent Clarke. But Jack is my brother. How do you know him? I asked. Miller's, did I mention irritating, voice protested for me to shut up. I ignored him. Levi leant back in his chair with a cocky smirk on his face.
Well, it appears you're going to have a family reunion soon. He helped us pull this whole thing off.
He was clearly after a reaction, so I did my very best to keep a neutral face. Is that so? I asked, sitting back in the chair, crossing my legs at the knee. Well, if he has, then I'll be interrogating him later on. For now, though, I'm busy with you, I snapped. Now, how did you get in and out of a store without leaving any DNA evidence? I asked, diverting the topic away.
How are you English, but Jack is American?
See, Mr. McIntyre, there are these magical things called planes. They take you from country to country, I snarked back. If this guy thinks he's more sarcastic than me, he is very much mistaken. Levi narrowed his eyes.
How are you in the rank you're in when you can't be any more than 26 years old?
Levi asked, nodding to the badge on my shoulder that read 20's other new teens. Oops, it's best to hope nobody else saw this. I was wearing my work jacket, and having personal badges on them was a big no-no. I must remember to take it off as soon as I can. I'm 22. I paused to let McIntyre absorb the info. I was an exception to the rule, I snarked, feeling very proud of myself. You technically weren't allowed to join until you were 23, but I got a fast track of sorts. Plus, my 23rd was less than 6 months away. No doubt this pompous cretin would go in tittle-tattle to Jack if what he said was true. Good. Let him. Levi then did 3 things that irritated me to the core. God, I wanted to knock him out. He sniffed, then raised his eyebrows, then leant back into his chair.
So, special exception. Are you going to do your job and finish interrogating me? Or are we done here?